Hello everyone and welcome back to another Figurehead Reviews video, and today we are taking a look at the Marvel Legends Hawkeye from the Retro Collection Wave 2. Here we have Hawkeye displayed on that retro card back with his classic logo there at the top, and then we see him displayed with his bow and quiver as called out by that little burst pattern down there at the bottom. On the back we see some artwork there of Hawkeye drawing back his bow ready to fire a shot. Then we do have a quick read-up. Witnessing Iron Man in action, Clint Barton attempted to emulate the hero by donning a colorful costume and employing his archer skills to fight crime. Then we have all the other figures featured in this Retro Collection wave. And we do have the UPC code, so you can check with your local retailer to see if they still carry this in stock. But enough about that. Let's get this open and take a look at Hawkeye. And here is Hawkeye outside of his packaging, and I'm a bit torn with this figure. I feel like I want to like it more than it probably deserves. Growing up, Hawkeye was one of my favorite Avengers. I had a lot of the solo Avengers stories from the late 80s and early 90s, and it featured Hawkeye in many of those, if not all of them. I didn't have the entire series, but all the ones that I had featured Hawkeye, and I always loved the trick arrows and everything that he had. And looking at the figure, it's a great looking figure, but unfortunately the articulation of the Bucky cap mold just doesn't do well for a figure that requires some really good arm articulation. Not having butterfly joints or anything like that means that you're not going to get the best poses where he's drawing back his weapon. And that is unfortunate for a character whose sole purpose is firing arrows. We just don't really get a good representation of that when it comes to that articulation. Now, speaking of his weapons, he does come with that bow, which isn't terrible looking, I suppose. I mean, the mold and everything's great, but we get that plastic string on it, which really doesn't do well. I mean, I would have been okay if that string was a real string and we could have it drawn back, because then the articulation wouldn't be as big a deal, because you could flex an elastic string or something like that all the way back, and it would be good. But unfortunately, we have this plastic string that it'll flex a little bit, but you don't want to stress it too much. And then he does get a quiver full of arrows that will plug right into his back, and the sculpt work is fine on that, and the only paint that we have there is on the fletching there on the back of the arrows, so it's not terrible looking. Now, in standing straight up, Hawkeye is coming in at 6¼ inches tall, which makes him 15.9 centimeters, so he does stand well with the rest of the Avengers. But since he doesn't come with any kind of interchangeable accessories, no hands or head or anything like that, let's go ahead and just jump in here and get a better look at the paint and sculpt here on Hawkeye. And getting up close here, we can see a pretty decent looking head sculpt. It is going to be the same sculpt that we saw with the Dark Hawkeye figure a few years ago, so it doesn't really bring anything new to the table, but the paint does look decent on it, and I do like that we get some shading there around the H. That just helps make it pop out a little bit more, and it looks like my eyes actually came out not too shabby, so I'm pretty pleased with that. And the rest of the face did come out looking good. His little armor piece that he has going down here, it's not bad looking. In fact, I don't really know how you would pull this off otherwise, but the downside is if you rotate the figure around, it's going to rotate with it. So depending on how you want it to look, it's going to maybe impede some different dynamic poses. And then when I turn it around too far, it's going to just unbutton there. So not a bad design to it necessarily, and I really don't know how else you'd pull it off, considering, I mean, that is what that piece looks like on Hawkeye. So to try to do it maybe in two pieces, I guess, you could have had the belt separate, but then it would have been hard to have this piece, so I don't really know how else they would have done it. But I do like the design, the scales look good, you get that metallic looking paint on it, so it does look pretty good. Going down on the arms, these are loose, so if they do, come off, all you gotta do is just kind of wedge them back up there on the bicep and they'll be good. And cuffs are fine, no problems there. And the hands, I will admit, I had a very hard time getting the bow in this hand, so just be aware you might want to heat that up. And then here's the other hand. I do wish one thing that we did get with the other Hawkeye figure was the one hand had a finger, it was a trigger finger, which was great for pulling back on that drawstring. Now it's just going to be his entire hand, so that's kind of odd looking. The rest of the figure is pretty much a standard Bucky cap, though. The body sculpt is, the legs are. I mean, for the boots, obviously we get these big old cuffed boots, which is very classic look. but not a whole lot else going on. And yeah, I wanted to show that off. Big nasty chunk of paint came off. That was right out of the package, so that's a little bit of a disappointment. But yeah, so not a whole lot else to look at with this guy. Now, being a Bucky Cap figure, articulation is nothing to write home about. You got a head that goes all the way around, looks down that far, up that far. His arms can come up about 90 degrees. A very clicky, and that's on both arms too. I don't know why they're so clicky, but very clicky rotation there. We do have a bicep swivel, double jointed elbows. Then we do have a rotation and a hinge on each of the hands. But as I mentioned, this one is going to have that ulnar and radial type of articulation there. You do have an ab crunch, but to use it, it gets a little weird with this piece, and it actually becomes very difficult to even use it. And I already talked about the waist rotation and the limits that you have there. You have legs that can come apart that far, kick forward, not too shabby, backwards, not much at all, upper thigh cut, double jointed knees, boot cut, and then a hinge and ankle pivot. And that about does it for this review, everyone. So overall, after messing with it some more, not really thrilled with the figure. Just the articulation of the Bucky Cap mold is definitely getting old, so it's sort of a bummer to see it with a figure that is supposed to be as agile as Hawkeye is supposed to be. We just can't get a ton of dynamic posing. He's always either going to be like just drawing back the bow or having just fired the bow. You're not going to really get a full draw on it, which is, I want to be able to do a full draw pose. That's just, it's not going to happen with this particular figure. But with that being said, though, I don't know when we're going to see another Hawkeye figure that is going to have those features. So having a classic Hawkeye, you might want to pick him up just to have him as a stand-in right now until something better does come along. If you're not a big Avengers or classic Avengers or Hawkeye fan, though, I'd say pass. It's nothing crazy. You're not going to get any cool, amazing, shots out of this or dynamic posing. So yeah, that's a bit of a disappointment because, like I said, I really like the Hawkeye figure. But with that being said, that does it for this review. Make sure to hit that thumbs up if you like it. Subscribe for more content just like this. And as always, thanks for watching my videos, and have a great day.